Hello, I'm Shane in Sweden, and in this series of presentations, we're looking at how we can investigate a simulated data breach using Splunk. Now, in the last part, we introduced Splunk as a security tool. We talked a bit about the Lockheed Martin Cyber Kill Chain, how we can use that as an investigative model. And we had a quick overview of the data that was available to us here at Wayne Enterprises that we can use to investigate our data breach. In this part, we're going to start and try to retrace the attacker's action as they go through the cyber kill chain. So let's get started. So what's the story so far? What we know is that we have a web server, I'm really not Batman.com, in the Wayne Enterprises domain, and it's been attacked. The result of which was that the homepage on our website was defaced by Poison Ivy. So we need to find out how this occurred. So we are back in Splunk, and the first thing we're going to do, we're going to follow our Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. So the first stage is the reconnaissance stage. Okay, and this is where we see things like port scans, fingerprinting, application fingerprinting, OS fingerprinting, host discovery scans. So this is the type of activity we're trying to find now using Splunk. We can perhaps see if there's any evidence of a scanning from an external website into our Wayne Enterprises network. So if we use our index again, and this time we're going to go for a ping scan, see if there's any evidence of a ping scan. So if we choose our source type here, we're going to use the stream. Let's do stream, but we're going to choose stream ICMP instead, which is ping protocol. And that'll give us all the events using our stream of ICMP events. Okay. Now, obviously, there's quite a few of them, so we may want to just look at counts. So we can use the stats command, and we want to count our destination IP by the source IP. So in a scanning attack here with ping, you probably get one machine which is sending out lots of ping commands to lots of different IP addresses, potential IP addresses in our network, and the attacker is trying to see if he'll get any response. So in that situation, you're going to see an awful lot of pings coming from one source IP address. It can be several, but we'll start off with look at see if there's from one, and it should be going to a lot of destination IP addresses. We should try to sort our data. So we want to sort it with the max count first. So if we sort in reverse order by the count of our destination IP, right, and we're getting from these quite a few counts, but let's see what the destination IP addresses it was. Okay, so this is not much good. We can see we're getting massive amounts of duplicates. We want to see if one of these source IP addresses is contacting lots of different IP addresses. So we perhaps should be using, instead of count, we should be perhaps using distinct count function, which is DC. And we'll call this as requests, as pings. And here we can sort minus pings. So we should get the maximum amount of pings. And we can see that, well, for start, there's a couple of internal pings. And then when you get outside, there are basically very few. It's just unique. So we can't see any evidence here of a major host discovery scanning effort at all. The attacker perhaps has not carried out a ping attack. Let's try another approach. Let's see if there's some sort of TCP communication taking place. TCP IP, so we go to the TCP stream, and we'll do the same thing. See if we can find anything suspicious. Well, you can see, for example, here you're getting server that's contacting a lot of our hosts or a lot of addresses, but it's an internal address 192, 168. It's a machine inside our own network, so we want to filter that out. So let's use the search for that. And we'll use a search parameter, setting the source IP to not be equal to 192.168.star. And we'll pipe that through to the rest of our stats command, and we'll search again. So we only really want counts from external machines. Okay, now we can see we've got a number of servers, and two in particular here. We've got this count activity, which seems very high, against this IP address, and this server against these two IP addresses. I'd be interested to see what these IP addresses are. And we can do that quickly. We can actually quickly just look at what that is by putting that address. And we can see which server it is. And this is actually the server that is our web server. So we can see that somebody is contacting our web server quite a lot from these two external IP addresses. Okay, so we found one interesting bit of information. We have our web server, I'm really not batman.com, and we know that the web server is running on this local machine, which is connected to this IP address, 250.70. And now we have two external IP addresses of interest, both of which had quite a lot of communication with our web server. So we can see we've got two IP addresses of interest that we can investigate. Now, one thing that's useful when we're doing a Splunk search, and one of the reasons why it's useful to have a number of different data sources, is that sometimes you want to cross-check your results from another data source just to make sure that you're seeing a consistent pattern. So for example, if we use our index and we're looking at our web address, we can see where in our data sources our web server turns up. Now, previously we were looking at the stream data for TCP. So now we can perhaps use a different type of source. We can see we've got a couple of source types here. So let's try secure kata. So we're interested in data involving our web server. We've got quite a few events. And here you can see we've got source IP. And you can see once again, we've got these two web addresses turning up, two IP addresses using this suricata information. So we can see it's 42 and 114. And again, we may want to filter out local IP addresses. So we can set the source IP address not equal to local addresses. So now we've confirmed our two IP addresses, external IP addresses of interest, using a completely different search method. But how do we know this was something suspicious? How do we know this was actually something malicious against our server? Well, we can use the capabilities of suricata here to check what was happening from one of these sources. So if we take that source, if we just change this to set the search source equal to 40.80.148.42, and we search that instead, we can see which type of signatures we're getting from suricata. Okay. And look here, we can see there was a possible cross-site scripting attempt from that IP address. And here we've got a possible SQL. So here we can see that 100% of the activity account here was classified by suricata as a web application attack. So we can summarize the activity here from this IP address. And if we do a sort on that, sort minus count. So we can see we have cross-site scripting attacks. We have sending invalid HTTP posts. We've got possible SQL injection. So we can see we've got a number of different attack profiles here, a number of different attacks being attempted on our web server. I'm just going to run a quick query here where the destination is our web server and the source type we're looking at is our web stream and the source is our suspicious IP address. Now if we look at the form data, we keep seeing this Acunitics. And if I go to the user agent, this is very interesting because normally we'd expect to find one user agent, for example, like this Mozilla. But here we're seeing quite a lot of different user agent identities. And it keeps coming back to here you can see actually somebody's tried to do some sort of injection attack through the user agent string. It keeps coming back to Acunitics. Now if we look at what Acunitics is, we can see that in fact Acunitics is a market leading vulnerability scan. So we know not only that the attackers are carrying out a vulnerability scan on our web server, but they're using this tool, probably using this tool to do it. Okay, so what's the story so far? We know that Wayne Industries website, I'mReallyNotBatman.com, has been attacked. We have identified malicious traffic from one IP address, 4080.148.42. And we can see according to the Suricata classification of the traffic that this traffic was malicious and that a wide variety of different attacks were being attempted from this address. But we have still quite a few questions. So we've seen that there were a wide variety of attacks from this IP address. The question is, did any of these attacks actually succeed? I mean, are these the attacks that compromised our web server? And if so, which one? We also don't know for certain at the moment that this IP address is the only actor in our attack. There could be other IP addresses which are also attacking us. We need to check that. And we also need to know if the website was the only target. I mean, the whole defacing of our website could just be a distraction from the real purpose of the attack. So we've still got quite a few questions and we're still in the reconnaissance phase. Okay, so we have some questions here. Is our web server the only target, or is the web server just a distraction? Well, we know we can see traffic from a suspicious IP address, 148.42. The question is, where were the destinations of that traffic? So let's check that out right away. So we can use here, we can use a source type. Well, we're not really sure. We want to see all sorts of protocols. We'll use star as a wildcard to get all the streams from HTTP, ping, TCP, and so on. And we want to pluck out all the traffic where our source is our suspicious IP address. Now we can see directly that there are only two addresses. Okay, so now we know that the suspicious IP address was contacting two of our local servers, and you can see the entire focus was on 192, 168, 250, 70. Okay. Now we can check that this is our web server. If we change our information to IS, I assume that we would know what the IP address of our web server was, but in case we don't, there it is again. We can see it's 250.70. Okay, so it does seem like the web server is the main target of interest. I think we can focus on this as our target for the moment. The next question is, of course, whether or not there were other actors involved. We are aware that there is one IP address that was acting suspiciously, 148.42. The question is that the only source of malicious traffic to our web server? So we can start off with looking and see which data sources we have that actually mention our web server. And if we run that question, you can see we have a number of source types. We have the Suricata IDS, we have the Fortinet Advanced Firewall, we have, of course, Internet Information Server, and we have Splunk's own stream app looking at their web protocol. Okay, the main way of interacting with a web server is, of course, through the HTTP protocol. So we can start off by looking at the traffic there. So we've got our website, and we'll take the source type from the HTTP stream. and then we'll just look at, and we're just going to count that by the source. Now we can see we seem to have 2 IP addresses, so they're definitely not as many cants. It's not as active against our web server as the other address, but still something we need to look at. However, is the traffic from both these sources, we know that the traffic from this one from Suricata was malicious. Is the traffic from the second website also malicious? Well, if we change our source type to Suricat, and we set as our source our new web address, our new IP address, we can see we're getting one destination, which is our web server. And as you can see, a lot of the fields here are, we don't seem to be getting all the fields we were getting before. And that is because Splunk has gone into fast mode. If we go to smart mode, it will start discovering the complete set of fields. And we're going to do stats count by signature. And we're getting no results. So Suricata couldn't classify this as dangerous traffic. So if we just look at the traffic, and let's just go down and check which URL it was. So there's only one URL, and it was against the Joomla administrator.index. We can confirm this if we take away the source requirement. So we're looking at all sources, but we're still interested in I'm really not Batman. And if we group our data by source and signature, and see what Suricata says. Now we're only getting one page of results here, and other than the web server itself, which seems to be traffic against itself, we can see that all the malicious traffic that has been classified Suricata comes from the same address. So Suricata did not see or identify the traffic from 114.63 being malicious. So it'd be interesting to see what it was that traffic that was coming from 114. So if we go back to our web stream, and set the source to our other IP address, which was 22.63.114. As we can see, there's quite a lot of traffic. Interestingly, we can see there's only one URI, one URL, Joomla administrator index.php. Now, our web server contains a Joomla CMS, content management system, and in the Joomla content management system, the administrator subsite with the index PHP is where you log in. The other IP address, source IP address, seem to be directing a lot of traffic towards the administrator login of our website. Of course, we're aware that we have a Joomla content management system, but if you're looking at this information from an external consultant, just because you see attempted traffic against this web address or URL does not actually mean that a Joomla CMS system exists. A good vulnerability scanner will, of course, try to contact many different types of CMS systems, like, for example, WordPress, just to see if they're there, because if they're there, there may be a vulnerability that they can use. To check that the actual Joomla system is really there, we can actually just go to the status, and you can see that actually most of this traffic against the Joomla system came back with an HTTP OK, which means that it was accepted, which means that the address was valid, and that we have a Joomla content management system. And we can even see here the type of user agent, and that's quite suspicious because we can see it's a scripted contact. And if we look at the form data to see what type of information they were sending into our Joomla CMS, well, you can see it looks like they're trying to lots of logins with different usernames and passwords. Okay, so we now have come beyond our reconnaissance stage and into our exploitation stage, obviously. So it's a good point in time to have a quick summary of where we are. Okay, so we have our Wayne Industries website, I'm really not Batman.com. which is on this server. We have the IP address, of course, and we've identified now that it uses a Joomla content management system. We were able to identify that a suspicious IP address, 148.42, seemed to be engaged in scanning and different sorts of attack traffic against our web server. And now we've identified a second actor, 63.114, and it looks like it might have attempted some sort of brute force password attack against the Joomla administration webpage, which is where you log in as an administrator. So we have potential attacks here, one of which may have succeeded, and we have a brute forcing, which also may have succeeded. So we need to investigate further. And we also know that they were probably using the Qnetics vulnerability scanner to actually carry out the scanning of our web server for vulnerabilities. Now we are definitely into the exploitation phase. So we'll end this video here, and I will see you in the next part where we'll see how our attackers succeeded to break into the website.